when I was a boy in my hometown Jinan in eastern China. I saw a smiling Westerner dressed like a Chinese worker riding a green bicycle. I was astonished. It was the Cold War, and China was cut off from the West. This Westerner was the first I'd ever seen, and was as alien to me as a creature from outer space. His name was James Veneris. He was captured during the Korean War and had chosen to stay in China. Veneris had served in the US Army in World War II in the Pacific Campaign against the Japanese. Like many veterans, he was unable to find work in peacetime America and had re-enlisted at the start of the Korean War in 1950. President Truman had sent American troops to Korea to stop the spread of communism. The USA, with its allies, under General MacArthur and the flag of the United Nations, crushed the North Koreans and threatened my country, the People's Republic of China. Chairman Mao mobilized a Chinese volunteer army which pushed the UN troops back to the 38th parallel. After 3 years of war, 1.5 million dead and 2.5 million injured, the United Nations Command and the Communist forces signed an armistice on July 27, 1953. Korea remains split into two countries, North and South. There were thousands of prisoners on both sides. All those who refused repatriation to their homeland were transferred to a neutral zone and given 90 days to reconsider their decision. 23 of them, including James Veneris, were Americans. There was also one British.
Does anybody want to go home? No!
Before the 90 days expired, two Americans, Edward Dickinson and Claude Batchelor, decided to return home.
Corporal Batchelor, how did you become a progressive? By reading several of the books that the communists had and newspapers. Gradually, little by little, I began to believe a lot of their charges against the UN side.
Well, I never decided to go to communist China. I wanted to get my revenge for my buddies that have been killed and starved to death and what they have done to me.
Corporal Edward S. Dickinson, back with us once again here in the free world.
Nevertheless, both were court-martialed and sentenced to 10 and 20 years in prison.
If I'd returned, take a look at what happened to Dickinson and Batchelor, I'd be in the same place they are. More likely up for a death sentence or a prison term. I don't feel it's right. I'd like to see each and every one of you Americans stand up now and oppose McCarthy and his acts.
My name is Harold Webb from West Palm Beach, Florida.
My name is Aaron Wilson from Urania, Louisiana.
This is a very happy moment for me, for now I am free from McCarthyism. Friends, the only way to stop fascism in America is to do as I have done, stand up and fight for our rights.
William C. White, Thomasville, Arkansas. For the first time in my life, I've witnessed complete equality. South Koreans, Mexicans, Filipinos, white men, all mixed together.
My name is Louis Griggs, and my home is at Jacksonville, Texas. I stayed behind to escape the Red Bait and McCarthy, and to assure that I'll never again have to fight in another unjust war as I did in Korea. Even if I had wanted repatriation, the fates of Dickinson and Batchelor would have stopped me.
My name is Richard Tennyson. I live in Alden, Minnesota. People who hate war and stand up for their beliefs are faced with McCarthy and his fascist cut-control House Un-American Activities Committee. I will return someday when I can speak for peace lawfully.
The USA was alarmed by the Red Menace and believed that the Chinese had brainwashed the American POWs. Senator Joseph McCarthy, head of the Committee on Un-American Activities, led a series of investigations feeding on public hysteria. McCarthy branded the 21 soldiers as traitors and turncoats. I have never forgotten the Westerner on the green bicycle and have always wondered what happened to James Veneris and the other POWs who chose to live in China. But 50 years have passed since their fateful decision. After a long search, I found one of them, David Hawkins, the youngest of the group. I met him on his first trip back to China after 47 years.
It's kind of like coming home, believe it or not. It's like, it's kind of like coming back to a place that has a lot of memories for you. The turning point of my life, I guess you would say. I've always had an affinity for the Chinese people. I've always wanted to come back and see it later, to see what changes were made. Oh, wow.
As I traveled with David Hawkins in China, I realized that it was an act of great courage for him to appear in this film.
We are South Koreans, American, and British who love our homes, our people, and our countries. What unites us all is our desire for peace, for real democracy, and social equality. Anyone who breathes the word peace in America now becomes at once a communist and an outlaw. But here we have learned much and have caught a glimpse of what man can achieve when he works for the common good and not for personal gain. That goal of happiness and peace can never be reached unless peace is kept. We believe that our greatest task is to keep the peace and win democracy for our people. But if we return, our voices will be silenced. That is why we are here.
My guest tonight is the youngest U.S. Army turncoat of the Korean War. You see him behind me. He's David Hawkins of Oklahoma City.
The Mike Wallace Interview.
3 years ago, the United States was stunned by an announcement from war-torn Korea. U.S. Army Private David Hawkins and 20 other prisoners of the communists had become turncoats. They had renounced their own country and disappeared behind Red China's bamboo curtain. Dave, first of all, let me ask you this. Another explanation of the turncoats was suggested in the New York Times on August 14, 1955. Most of the turncoats really were not converts to communism, but were themselves guilty of crimes against their fellow Americans in captivity and did not wish to return to face the music. What about that?
I don't consider that true. None of the fellows that were with me were... I read some articles also on this, on clippings that we received while in China, that said that a lot of us were guilty of murder or had committed acts of treason while in the camp, or stolen food from their buddies, or was responsible directly for another fellow prisoner of war losing his life. This is not true.